Anyway, before that, I'll just first of all, I'd like to thank to Exabyte for actually inviting me to moderate this session. My name is Salman, and I am from the e-commerce division at Sidec, also previously known as Sidec. So, but now starting from 2020, and we changed from Sidec to now is Sidec. So, yep, as mentioned by Lauren, the host just now, we have very experienced speakers from the e-commerce industry, which is Mr. Hock Koon, e-commerce director at MDEC, and also Mr. Ganesh Kumar Bangah, executive chairman commerce at DotAsia Ventures. Mr. Ganesh is also a former chairman and also current advisor of PCOM. All right, so let's go to the topic today. We are going to discuss on the topic next stage of e-commerce in Malaysia, the challenges and opportunities. So let me start this session by throwing the first question to our panel speakers. Malaysia e-commerce market is actually becoming one of the largest in Southeast Asia. Its growth is outpacing that of traditional established market in the region. This was apparent even before the impacts of the pandemic, of course. And the Malaysia e-commerce space shares a lot of similarities with other emerging markets in Southeast Asia, like Singapore, Indonesia, and also Thailand. Okay, so now the question is, where is Malaysia now in terms of e-commerce growth and compared to the other Southeast Asia countries? Mr. Song, you want to go first?
So for me, I think the e-commerce sector in Malaysia is at for me, I still think that we are still at the early majority. So if you look at the adoptions of e-commerce, initially will be the early adopters, but I think we have gone past that. Now we are at the stage of growth, high growth, and these are the early majority. That means people are rushing into e-commerce. So that is the current status now, early majority, as I think. And yes, Malaysia, because of the early start for Southeast Asia, I think we are one of the leading countries in terms of e-commerce, but there are other areas that we are not number one. Therefore, I think moving forward, we should look at those things that we are still lacking. And those are the areas we should focus in order to grow the e-commerce sector further. For example, if you're comparing for us and comparing to Singapore, the ARPU, the average purchase price per order is much higher comparing to us. So we need to grow that. But in terms of, because of the sheer populations, our market size is bigger than them. And in the same comparison, you compare to Indonesia and Vietnam, their population is very high. So their ARPU is very small. But over time, they will be growing as well. And then in terms of market size, they will be bigger. And that also brought another good, indications for the listener here is that when you go into e-commerce now, you should not look at Malaysia. You should look at Southeast Asia as one market. After all, by nature, e-commerce is borderless. So you can, and our culture in terms of, buyers' behavior and buyer likes are same in Southeast Asia. So take the Southeast Asia as your market. So a short answer is that we are at a high growth stage, and then we need to capitalize on this leadership, and then moving forward, I think look at the whole region as a market.
All right. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Song, for your thoughts and also some insights about our e-commerce growth compared to the others. What about Mr. Ganesh? Anything from your perspective? What is your opinion on the Malaysia e-commerce?
So I think if you look at e-commerce, you can actually break it down to three components, right? The supply, the demand, and the enabling infrastructure. Right? So if you look at in terms of the supply, you look at the SMEs that are onboarding, we do have quite a number of SMEs that have onboarded, right? And it was still slow coming, and now since the MCO, it has picked up, but still not as fast, I think, as what we would like. So the issue with that is, and I'll talk a bit about the issue of the supply not picking up, but let me go to the demand first.
Okay.
Demand takes time to come up, right? But we have been blessed to a certain extent with the lockdown, because demand over the last, I would say, 1 year has just gone up like nobody's business. From growing at 50% year on year, I think we grew 2 to 3 times last year because of the MCO, right?
Yep.
So demand has actually grown faster than supply, right? And then if you look at the enabling infrastructure, you see enabling infrastructure takes time to build. For example, logistic infrastructure, you can't just buy 100,000 trucks, or sorry, 10,000 trucks overnight, right? So when demand goes up faster than supply and infrastructure is not fast enough, what you get is you get longer times to handle delivery, right? So I think one of the issues that has happened over the last 1 year, I would say, or 1 year plus, I would say, is that because demand has overshot supply and infrastructure, in particular infrastructure, two things have happened. One is delay in delivery times has happened because infrastructure is slow. For example, in the last 1-2 months, because warehouses have suddenly had a surge in demand, they've not been able to hire enough people to cater for that demand. Your delivery times of products from a couple of days could now take 1 to 2 weeks, right? So I think then the infrastructure has to catch up. Of course, infrastructure is difficult to catch up during the lockdown because it's difficult to build this infrastructure or acquire this infrastructure during a lockdown. So that's now picking up, right? Of course, demand after lockdown is done, will go down a bit, then infrastructure will come up and will all be back to normal, right? And then when it comes to supply, I think the biggest issue is we're still, a lot of our supply is actually being provided by foreign companies, right? Malaysia is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to technology in Malaysia. We've always been consumers of technology more than developers of technology.
Okay.
This is a key issue, right? If you look at China, they consume and develop on their own, right? Search engine is Baidu.
Okay, yep.
Right, their own search engine, their messaging is QQ, their own messaging, right? So if their consumption and supply is on their own, is within their own community, right? And that's good because then it actually helps build a tech community on their own. Whereas when you look at Malaysia, even versus other countries in Southeast Asia, I'll talk a bit more about this. We're always a consumer of technology. Our search engine is Google, we use Facebook, we're always a consumer of technology, right? Simply because we're good in English, etc. So we don't actually create technology as much as we would like, right? So I think that's where we need to focus on. And because of that, even you go to Lazada and Shopee, you will see that a lot of the merchants are actually foreign merchants versus local merchants, right?
Okay.
So I think the biggest two things we need to focus on today is demand, because the lockdown has been caught up on its own. What we really need to focus on is actually making sure that the demand is local demand, right? And e-commerce naturally can be local demand because foreign companies always take longer to supply products locally, right? Versus like a search engine. A Malaysian search engine has no chance to succeed, right? So I think we need to build the capability of local merchants, especially when it comes to growth, right? We've got hundreds of thousands of merchants online, but how many of them are actually doing well? How many of them are actually growing? Or is it they're just supplying and they're doing like 5 to 10,000 ringgit a month, which is either here to there, right? You really need to bring merchants to $1 million a month level, right? And then they actually, I would say, making a profit, and then it's actually worthwhile. So we really need to focus more on the demand. And once demand and local demand picks up, then I would say that the infrastructure investments will have to come in. But infrastructure investments will happen naturally. The delivery companies we have, the payment companies we have enough of them, and they are already quite established. So on that is good, but we really need to focus on the supply side.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ganesh. So I have a question. So my question is, when we are forecasting the growth of Malaysia e-commerce, are we, because I think there are three components of, in e-commerce, we have service provider, the infrastructure, and then the buyers, and also the sellers. So I mean, in terms of, getting the growth, exponentially, so which are the three key things that, the most important one?
So I think when you talk about demand, is the sellers lah, right?
Okay.
Sellers. So I just talk that demand needs to build up. Demand means getting the sellers, capacity of the sellers, knowledge of the sellers, and number of sellers up, right? And today, number of sellers, I think, are there. Again, because of the lockdown that have hit our country in the last 1 year, sellers have no choice. They've gone and started selling online. So in terms of number of sellers, that has come naturally. But the sales of the sellers are not as high, I think, as we would like.
Okay. So from your point of view, is sellers are important to focus on. What about Mr. Song? Do you agree with Mr. Ganesh about that?
To the certain extent, yes. I think, but if you are looking at the whole ecosystem, you cannot be only focused on one areas, but the approach has to be, I think, should be more holistic. The reason why I say so, if you look at the last 5 years, right? So that we have this national e-commerce strategic roadmap that the government has. Our focus is about getting sellers, in this case, to adopt e-commerce, and then that's in the end, the national e-commerce strategy roadmap number 2. We just being endorsed. We focus on we also focus on the consumer side, which is the buyers, because I think just like what Ganesh had mentioned just now, because of the pandemic, the landscape has changed. That means the consumer already changed from offline to online, in fact, by the nature of lockdown. So what I'm trying to say is that not good enough just to teach our seller to come online to sell, but we also make sure that there is enough what they call fish in the market, so that whoever we teach how to fish, there is market there for them. Meaning, right? Okay. So meaning is that we need to grow the market. So no point that we get everyone to go online and sell, but where else our consumer is still buying offline. So I think there's 2 areas that we looked into: the buyer and the seller, and this is very for me. It has to be a holistic approach. So you have seller, you have buyers, as well as then you have service providers. The service providers like the delivery service, the logistics service, the digital marketing, the e-marketplace, all of them also need to be into this. So it has to be looked into in a more holistic manner, and these are the areas that we need to how to connect all these things together. So that is, I think, is critical.
So per se is we need to balance everything, and only we can grow faster.
Unfortunately, you can't balance, but you really need to work on every areas. And it's some initiative, some program is to grow the buyer base, some initiative is to grow the seller base, and some programs will help like the grants and all that to help the local service providers to grow the local pool of talent in the service provider. So there will be various programs helping the different stakeholders or the ecosystem players in the e-commerce space or e-commerce sector.
All right. Okay. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Ganesh and Mr. Song. I think let's move on to the second question. So the second question is more on about the challenges of the service providers and sellers and buyers that they could be facing right now. Any thoughts on maybe Mr. Song, you can any thoughts about the challenges that they are facing, even before pandemic or after pandemic? What are the challenges that you can see or forecast?
As I mentioned just now, I think we are at the early stage of early majority. So I think the current capacity of the service provider are okay to take in the influx. That means like the likes of Lazada, Shopee, and the others, even the the local one, the PG Mall. These are the new players also coming in, and then to serve the markets. Meaning is to help the local merchants to come online to sell. But moving forward, I think the service provider play an even more important role, because when we move on to the early majority and to the late majorities, then what will happen is that you need something that is more simplest, because those who can experiment themselves and come online to sell is already come online to sell. But the next phase, you need to make the ecosystem. You need to make it so easy, so convenient for the merchants to come online to sell, and that is we have to do with the e-commerce automations. For example, currently, for a seller, when they sell something, what they need to do is after they sell something, they need to have to worry about the delivery, and they have to worry about the payment side as well. So moving forward, I believe there will be more and more automations happening where else there is one applications or already have applications that serve all these needs. Meaning is that now all the merchants need to do to come online is sign up all the various service provider already there to help them, and it has to be seamless by then. So that I think that will happen. In terms of buyers, what are the challenges? I think it's the consumer protections that will increase the confidence. When you increase the confidence of buying, then I think that will help to grow the market. So campaigns and all that to spur the online consumption, to at least get those who have not go online to buy or purchase, get them to go online to purchase after they buy something, and then probably they will buy more higher value items. That is how you build the confidence of the consumer. That's how you grow, I think, grow the market as well. Yeah, so those are the things I think we can do to help to grow the market. Yeah, and the challenges that we need to address.
That are the challenges that, from your point of view. What about Mr. Ganesh? You are one of also the service provider. So before pandemic and after pandemic, what are the challenges that DotAsia or facing? Yep.
So we've invested actually in a group of enablers, I would say. I use the word enablers, right? So enablers from the automation platforms like Sung said, right down to the warehousing platforms, right down to even the different, I would say, linkages to delivery and whatnot, right? We got about 100,000 merchants that last year transacted about 3 billion ringgit on our platforms, on our various platforms, right? Whereas the year before, it was actually less than 1 billion ringgit, about 1 billion ringgit. So we actually encountered a 3 times growth as the number of merchants also grew. But I think the biggest challenge as we look at our merchants, the biggest challenge that our merchants actually face as we look at them very seriously is in growth. If you ask our merchants today, which actually our customers today, or customers of our investees today, what are the biggest issues? In fact, we should actually do a survey of this. They will actually come back and say that they can't actually grow their business, right? So they're stagnant. How do they grow their business? So they don't have enough capability or knowledge on how to grow their business again, as I mentioned, from 50,000, 100,000 a month to $1 million a month. They don't know how to do that. And that's the biggest challenge, right? And so I think we really need to educate these people on how to grow their business. And yes, of course, consumers also, as Mrs. Sung rightly pointed out, more consumers need to come in now, right? But there is a balance. The balance right now is more merchants want to grow, but consumers are not buying from them. Instead, are actually buying more from foreign suppliers. And I think that's another issue that has to be sorted out.
So what could possibly be the reason that they cannot grow? Is it because they don't have that knowledge, or the market is not ready, or
they don't have the knowledge?
So they don't have enough knowledge to grow their business.
Yes, they don't have enough knowledge, they don't have enough capability to grow. And they also inherently, they're not investing enough on marketing.
Okay. Yep.
Right? You open, and let me give you an example. If you open an e-commerce store today, and you open an e-commerce store on Lazada, you can open an e-commerce store very easily and start selling a product. But you're one among 1 million sellers, right?
Yes.
On Lazada or Shopee. So how do you make yourself stand out against the many sellers? That's the biggest challenge, right? And that's what one of our business, DotAsia Enterprise, actually focus on, actually increasing the capability of the sellers by helping them grow their business, right? But I think that's a key challenge.
Yeah, Mr. Song, anything?
I would like to add to that. It's correct, education is important, but I think one very critical success factor is the business owner themselves. Because if you notice that the current so-called more successful e-commerce merchants are those that are young, they have nothing to lose, they go in and then they try. For those already successful in their traditional market, and if you want them to transform into e-commerce, I think the very first thing is that the business owner, they themselves need to believe in it. I always say when I'm going at any sharing, I say that for the businesses like that, the very first thing we need to encourage is the business owner, they themselves have to go online and buy something. Because if they do not believe into e-commerce, the convenience of e-commerce and the potential of e-commerce, whatever you do, the education and all that, the result is very, very not so encouraging.
Because
but
they didn't understand.
If they have tasted themselves, then I believe then they will see, oh, wow, you know, hey, today I order my vegetable and tomorrow it deliver, you know, so those kind of things. And I give you an actual example. During this lockdown, and my family, we bought what do you call that? We normally go to the wet market to buy vegetable, but this round we have no choice. We go online to buy. And then and my mom, who is normally who do the marketing, and she said that, you know, don't buy online. You do not know the vegetable whether they're good or not. But when the next day when it arrived, and they say, hey, it's so fresh, it's so, you know, so good. And then from there on, now she have no qualms. She would just, okay, let's order online. So you have to go to that extent first. Let them try it, and from there they have the confidence, and you know, they themselves believe in it. Then the next step is then they are able to sell online. Otherwise, it's very difficult.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Ganesh, anything before we move on to the next one?
Yeah, I think I agree with Mr. Sung. The only thing is, as you look at the traditional sellers, they're actually divided into two: the owners and the people that actually operate the e-commerce platforms. And they tend to be different people, you know. So the owners and the people that are actually operating the platforms are different. Now you go to owners today, which we also have, a lot of my friends are owners of traditional businesses. My neighbor is the owner of Bonia, right? And you ask them, would you like to sell on e-commerce? Before the lockdown, they say, don't know lah. The sales don't know whether it will grow or not, right? But you ask them today, you want to sell on e-commerce? Yeah, I need to sell because there's no other choice. My traditional business has died, right?
Yeah.
So they know they need to sell, but the issue then is, but you know, the issue is my operation people, I don't know what they're doing, I don't know how they're doing, etc. So the capability, then I try to hire, then the people go to the next company or go to work for different people. You see where I'm coming from? Right? So I think the issue is the capability of these operators who can operate those stores. And again, operating the stores are actually easy. It's actually growing the sales of the stores, which is actually needed, right? So I think what we really need is we need to build that capability, and it starts from the mindset. Now, a lot of traditional retailers, when they start their online store, one of the biggest things they don't do is they don't spend enough on marketing, right? They don't see marketing as an investment. They just set up their store and think like a physical store. They set up the store, they don't need to spend on marketing, people coming to their store. But that's not how it works online. You need to spend on marketing, but marketing online can be turned into a return on ad spend. So for every dollar you spend online, you can actually turn that into, you know, how much of revenue it generates, right? So if they open a physical store, they spend $20,000 a month to pay for rental in KLCC. When they set up a store on Lazada or Shopee, they don't need to spend that $20,000 a month, right? They need to take that $20,000 and spend that on marketing. And that's the mindset now we lack. The owners are lacking that mindset that they need to spend on marketing as well, right? Today, their sales will be growing organically because of the lockdown. But in the future, that may not happen anymore, right? Because when lockdown is over, then your growth will stagnate again, right? So how do you get the next era of growth actually spending on marketing? And so that's a mindset that needs to change as well, right?
I agree with you, Ganesh. Mindset. If there's one thing we can take home for this particular session, which I would like to share with the team, I mean the listener here, is that so when traditional businesses or businesses who want to go into e-commerce, they're very worried that it cannibalizes their own business. They're very worried because, like, for example, I'm selling so well or offline, and now you ask me to set up a team to sell online, and I worry that it cannibalize, because I have to expose all my my prices online, and then I have to do so much in order to do a small, to generate a small revenue, because they're comparing to the traditional. So they're very worried about their cannibalizing their own business. But I would like to say that if it's better we cannibalize ourselves than somebody else cannibalize our business. So that is very important point. If not, moving forward, we are not sure that there's what do you call it? We do not know this pandemic happened, right? But we also cannot be sure there's another one coming. We do not know, but it may be bigger some more, and then you have no choice. So let's don't waste the pandemic. Let's learn from this, and then moving forward, the landscape has changed. Businesses need to take the steps to change. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Song. Lauren is here. Okay, anything, Lauren?
Yes, so we're going to have to wrap things up in about 3 to 4 minutes. So why don't we take a look at the questions in the Q&A? We have some pretty good ones there. So maybe
okay, all right. Okay, let's do that. Okay, let me just, which one is the question? All right, a lot of focus. There are the question about, besides of B2B and B2C, what's your thoughts on C2C?
Yeah, so I think in e-commerce, right, normally it starts with C2C, normally, social commerce, they sell, but that maybe is a starting point. And in that, we also have program like this to help the C2C, go into social commerce, selling using the social commerce to sell, or using WhatsApp to sell. But over time, this C2C will go to B2C, and because they start to search for more product to sell, and then the business grow. And this is how the natural progressions. So I think whether it's C2C, B2C, and important is B2B as well. B2B, I believe, is the next big growth space. So I think we need all B2B, B2C, and C2C as well. And in some countries, we talk about C2B as well, right? So in e-commerce, the possibility is endless. I would say endless. I dialed in earlier just now, and I listened to some of the question and some pointers that the previous panel have discussed, and you can see that the various way of doing business the possibility is endless. So you always can find a niche for yourself, I believe. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Mr. Song. Okay, Mr. Ganesh, I have a question for you. I mean, from Mr. Chen Hao Ten. So you're talking about marketing just now, right? So what is the essential marketing part in 2021 to actually educate the offline users to online? So, any thoughts?
So if you want so I think it's very important to bring your offline consumers online. And I think now, of course, there are very simple ways how you can do that, giving them vouchers if they buy online, if they go from offline to buy online, for example, the first time, give them some credit and whatnot. That's an easy way to actually get them to come online. But then I think building an omni-channel strategy where your online and offline is one. And I'm a customer of GNC, and I find that's very effective, right?
Okay.
To GNC and you build a GNC and you get the GNC loyalty points, you'll find those same loyalty points online as well, right? And then when they target you, whether you buy online or offline, is not different. So I think having a centralized CRM online and offline is important.
Okay. All right. Okay, I think we can go for a last question from Kevin Tan. How and will Malaysia to be ahead compared to other, especially in Asia? As known, COVID might go on for years, which it seems will change people's lifestyle. May I ask on the future focus after MCO and when we recover back, what are any initiatives that will help the developing an online and offline model? Any, like, Mr. Song, from your MDEC perspective, is there any, initiative after pandemic or now?
First of all, thank you for the questions. Yes, I started this particular conversation. I talk about the National E-commerce Strategy Roadmap, and we have done that. And now we are just rolling out our National E-commerce Strategy Roadmap number 2, which is NESR 2.0. And in it, we focus on other areas. We continues to do adoption, more effective adoptions. More people should come online, but we are looking into other areas, like for example, technology and innovations, and also data. And these are the areas that we are building a strong foundation for the next growth. So these are the areas that initiative that the government is doing in terms of to go for the next growth. So the NESR 2.0 is our guiding roadmap to help the nations to grow this. And this NESR 2.0 is a living document, meaning is that every year we will be engaging the industry player like Ganesh and the associations and the service provider to give us input. What are the things the government should do? What are the policy? What are the initiative we should push in order to grow the e-commerce sector? So that is the areas, I think, the focus in order for us to maintain our leadership in e-commerce. So we know now that we are one of the leaders, but there are other areas that we worked on so that we can maintain the leaderships moving forward. Yeah.
All right. I think that's all for this session now. Lauren?
Yep, I'm right here. And of course, to wrap things up, I'd like to thank each and every one of us for being a part of this event, the eCommerce Fest 2021. Salman, Song, and Ganesh, thank you so much for being here. I believe you helped a lot of the people who are watching this right now. You guys, let's give them a virtual round of applause to say thank you for all the input they've brought to the table today. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you guys again in the future. You stay safe now and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you. Song, thank you, Mr. Ganesh. Okay, bye.
Exabytes. Grow your business online.